Welcome back to the Michael Batson Show. Another college football weekend coming right around the corner. And to discuss it, she was so good the first time, we thought to bring her on the second time. Meghan McKeown, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm excited to be back.
So, new college football weekend. You're in Madison this week. Terps coming to town. A very good Maryland team. We get a preview what to expect?
Yes, this is a very good Maryland team. So it's funny, I had them the very first game of the season. I've had them the very first week of October. Now I have them the first week of November. So I've kind of been able to see the progression of this team since the beginning of the year. And what we thought would happen kind of has. This Maryland offense is explosive, and that's a lot because of quarterback Talia Tagovailoa. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten, and he ranks third, in yards per game with more than 285. He's really fortunate because he has excellent wide receivers, including Dante Demas Jr. But what's been really impressive about Maryland has been the emergence of some of these running backs. It's a young running back group, but Roman Hemby has really emerged as somebody who's been hard to stop for a lot of teams, and coaches have been really happy with how he's done. And on the defensive side of the ball, Maryland's not necessarily statistically very high in the Big Ten in a ton of categories, but it's a defense that's really good at making halftime adjustments. So their second half numbers are much better than their first half. So I'm curious to see. Everyone's really worried on Maryland about trying to stop the run game for Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a team that is known to be tough defensively, and they can run the ball down your throat. So the key is going to be trying to slow down Braylon Allen for Wisconsin.
Yeah, Braylon Allen, a really good player. But Wisconsin fans, I'm guessing, are expecting a little more out of Graham Mertz.
Yes, they are. Well, he's been playing really well as of late.
Yeah.
I believe he's thrown 9 touchdown passes over the course of the last couple of games. I think only 1 interception. So he's done a fantastic job. And it's just more so he's found his rhythm. Look, it's tough anytime, it doesn't matter what sport you're playing, when your head coach gets fired in the middle of the year. There's always some form of change that happens within a team when someone else becomes in charge. But the players really like Jim Leonhard. And I know they've advocated for him to be the main coach after this season and get the job permanently. But he was talking earlier this week just how Graham's really started to settle into a rhythm and become more consistent. And that's a lot of it because he's a junior now, and he's played against these teams before, so he knows now what to expect with the defenses when they come at him.
Yeah. You touched on Jim Leonhard because it's interesting because he was supposed to be Chris' successor for a long time, and now he's at the spot of the head coach, but it wasn't probably the upbringing we thought. Chris, 4 of 7 years have been 10 wins. You have 3 Big Ten West titles. He's been a Wisconsin kid or guy or player for over 50 years, but what was the main reason they let him go?
From a perspective just covering sports, Wisconsin is one of those very prominent football programs, and so the fan base has really high expectations, as does the athletic department. So I think, I think what the straw that broke the camel's back was, one, Wisconsin hadn't been as dominant in the Big Ten West as they had in the early 2010s. And then number 2, when you have your former head coach, Brett Bielema, come into Madison and kick some tail, I think that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. So I don't know if it was necessarily anything Paul Chryst did wrong versus the expectations of that program within that fan base are so high that they felt the need to make a decision.
Yeah, and we've talked about Maryland 6-2, who probably should be ranked right now. I don't know why they aren't. Another team who is having success is Illinois, as we just talked about. 7-1, best record in I don't know how many years. But listen, they rolled the dice with Belmont. They got a running back in Chase Brown. And what is suddenly working out there than that in Illinois? And how surprising is this?
It is surprising, but it's also not, because Brett Bielema is such a good coach, and he understands the Big Ten Conference. He understands how to recruit. He understands how to ride the course of the season. And what I mean by that is you have to understand as a coach when to push, when to pull your players, and just understand overall the landscape and temperature of the conference, which is a huge advantage that he has. I think Tommy DeVito has been fantastic for Illinois as well, and it's tough when you come in as a transfer to try to learn another team's offense, and he's just really found a fantastic rhythm. You can credit the offensive line of Illinois as well, but Chase Brown, and listen, Chase Brown had a great year last season, but this year you finally see Illinois piecing together some wins, and they showed spurts of that last season. They beat Minnesota on the road when Minnesota was a decent team. Minnesota's still a decent team, but Illinois really has just, I think, these types of teams who have fantastic, explosive years, chemistry is really good, and I think that's something you're kind of seeing pay off for Illinois.
Yeah, and Belma came in and beat Chris, so that was probably, as you said, the last straw. But Illinois is having a really good season. One of the big games for them, they'll face off in the Big House in a few weeks. So they could easily get a New Year's Six bowl if they just keep winning, because that conference is really rough right now.
Well, and they also, they have a chance to go into, the Big Ten championship. It's going to be interesting to see, and it's all going to come down to your Wolverines taking on Ohio State that last week of the season.
Yeah, and to kind of talk about that, I feel like the last time we talked, it was maybe 3-4 weeks ago. I feel like we were maybe on the point where we were like, maybe Michigan could play with Ohio State, coming off the motivation. But now seeing how Ohio State struggled with Penn State, and seeing, even though Michigan's ranked 5, does it seem like people have more confidence in Michigan beating Ohio State, or at least keeping it close?
I think keeping it close is 100% fair to say. I just think Ohio State right now is... Ohio State's a team that gets better as the season goes on. And keep in mind, Penn State's a really good team. There's a lot of really... the Big Ten East is stacked. So to me, Ohio State's a team that just kind of always has the ability to find a way to win. And Michigan is becoming a team like that as well. I think Michigan has shown some signs of being human over the course of the last couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. Maryland was leading that Michigan game for a little bit. So, I think J.J. McCarthy has been able to learn a lot this year. I think he's shown spurts of being really great. I also think he's shown spurts of, still being young and still getting a grasp for playing in the Big Ten. So I think it's going to be a fantastic finish when we see those two teams beat. They should both, be undefeated headed into that game.
Yeah, because Ohio State has a pretty easy schedule until that game. Michigan has Illinois, but it seems like it's going to be set up for a lot of money into whatever that day is for Fox. That's going to be a really hot ticket.
Yes, exactly.
So the college football rankings came out a few days ago. They're all refresh if anyone hasn't seen it. It goes 1 Tennessee, 2 Ohio State, 3 Georgia, 4 Clemson, 5 Bama, 6 TCU. We're just saying those 6 teams have a real shot. Pac-12, I don't know if they could find a path in. Are you surprised that Clemson jumped Michigan?
Yes, I was surprised by that. And I do think Clemson's had so much success historically, especially in the recent memory, especially with the college football playoff, that I do think maybe there is a little bit of a bias towards them. But at the end of the day, to me, the ACC is not nearly as good as the Big Ten football-wise. So you can't necessarily say that they are 100% better than Michigan. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that it's a tough argument to make. But at the end of the day, I think Ohio State and Michigan deserve to be in the top 4.
Yeah, and I think what you said about the ACC not being as good as a Big Ten, like Clemson beat Syracuse, Wake Forest, NC State, right? The 20, 21st, and 22nd best teams. But can you tell me with full confidence that those wins aren't better than Maryland, Michigan State, and Penn State? I just don't see it.
No, and the other thing to take into consideration is the hostile environments that you have to go into to play, all those games. I'm not convinced that it's necessarily better. I think Michigan's put together a really solid resume, and they have a case to get in. But here's the thing: at the end of the day, they have to win out, and they have to take care of business. And I think they have to beat Ohio State again.
Yeah, and it all goes back to their weak non-conference schedule. The first 3 weeks that hurt them, I think.
Yeah, and it's tough, and I get it too because you get a chance as a team to get experience on the field and get reps and get used to playing with each other. But at the same time, the committee looks at that, and you have to credit. Clemson, I believe, had some tough non-conference opponents.
Yeah, they've been good. Georgia kind of going with that, championship last year, so we're gonna put them up. Just they haven't played an SEC team with the winning record since week 3. They're probably good, but just again, how you said, it's about recency bias in last year for some of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think at least. Now, granted, Michigan was in the college football playoff last year.
Yeah.
So there is some of that as well. But I can't fully, with full confidence, say that Clemson's better than Michigan.
Yeah. And then big SEC matchup. It's probably Ohio State, Michigan, and Georgia and Tennessee are the biggest matchups. Georgia, Tennessee takes place Saturday, 2:30. What are we going to see from these two teams, do you think?
Oh, well, we're going to see a wild atmosphere, that's for sure. But, I think it's really good for college football that Tennessee is good again.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic fan base. And I think, Georgia's proven that they have both sides of the ball figured out, and it's going to be a fantastic game. And I think it's going to be a really good test for Tennessee. They beat Alabama. If they beat Georgia, to me, they prove they are truly the number 1 overall team in the country, the best football conference in the country. And Hendon Hooker is having a fantastic season. He's a Heisman candidate right now. So, Georgia's defense is tough, though. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, lots of weapons, lots of star power in that game. That will be maybe as good as Ohio State, Michigan. I don't know about how those fans will be in Columbus. I don't know.
Well, we know it's wild. We know there's no love lost between the Buckeyes and the Wolverines.
No. Thanks for joining us again. What week are we in now? Week 10?
10.
Oh my God.
No.
Crazy. All right. Well, thanks for joining us so much. Meghan McKeown stops by. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hear the sound of the falling rain coming down like an